Welcome to Sweet Sycamore Devotions. I'm your host, Nicole Dickey. Sometimes we just need a fresh perspective for a new encounter with Jesus. I love to combine my master's in theology with the historical context of the scriptures to help the Bible come alive in a new and fresh way. So grab those Bibles and let's dig straight into the Word of God. Hello, welcome to Sweet Sycamore. My name is Nicole, and I'm going to be your host for these short devotions. I'm so excited for this to be our first episode. We're going to be going through the book of Esther. And just to recap, I really love to combine historical context with the scriptures to help it to come alive in a new and a fresh way. I chose the name Sweet Sycamore just because I believe that Zacchaeus climbed that sycamore tree to have a new perspective. And he had a very sweet encounter with Jesus. And sometimes I think we just need a new perspective in order to have that new encounter. The crazy thing about the story of Zacchaeus is he thought he was searching for Jesus, but the reality of it was Jesus was searching for him all along. And so that's what I hope you find in these devotions is Jesus. It's simply that. It's not my words. We're going to just be going through the scriptures and just taking them apart and seeing what is really there. We want to keep these short and sweet. We want these to be something that you can do on your lunch break, on your way to work, whether you're watching through YouTube or podcast platforms, whatever it may be. I hope you find a resource here just to connect with the scriptures. And the first thing we're going to be doing is the book of Esther. I love the book of Esther. There is 10 chapters in the book of Esther. We are going to be doing a half a chapter each week. And before you go, you realize that that's 20 weeks. I know. That's 20 weeks. It's kind of crazy to be going through one book of the Bible. But here's the thing. I want this to be something where it's not just like us reading it and just taking it for what it is on the page, but to really dissect what is really there. And to do that takes a little bit of time, but also I don't want these to be massively long podcasts. So we are going to start today in chapter 1, and we're only going to go through verse 12. And then next week, when we're back again, we will finish up chapter 1. So this whole book of Esther starts out with kind of the splendor of King Xerxes and his empire. Now, it tells us that his empire went from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces. What does that really mean? Well, it's like from literally sea to shining sea. In fact, when we look at the history records, this is the largest empire ever. I mean, sometimes you think like Rome had the largest empire, but no, actually under King Xerxes was the largest empire in history today. So this is a very, very powerful king. And it tells us that we are in the 3rd year of his reign. So he's pretty new to this whole thing. His father had reigned previously to him. Now, it tells us that there's this party going on that is 180 days. You guys, this is a 6-month long party. Anybody else feel like exhausted after a party that just like lasts 4 hours? I'm thinking about the fact that this lasted 180 days and it just sounds utterly exhausting. However, this was what was going on. It was a very important party. It had all of the princes and the nobles and the officials. They were the ones that got to join in on this party. Now, let me ask you, who do you think paid for this party? You know, the taxpayers, right? They still had taxpayers even back then. They paid for this party. And I look at this and I think, well, if I was somebody watching the castle go up in this massive party for 180 days with everybody important who is relatively even somewhat important enjoying this party, and it was at my expense, if I was paying my tax dollars, I would get kind of frustrated and angry at the fact that this party is still going on, right? We always count the vacation days of our president, right? Can you imagine having everybody who's important taking basically vacation days for 180 days? I think there could have been an uprising. So it doesn't surprise me that after 180 days of this party, there was a feast number 2. And feast number 2 was 7 days long, obviously a little bit shorter, but this was for everybody. Every single person who lived in the area of the castle this is all people, they had a banquet. And it tells us that this banquet was quite elaborate. It says there was white linen cords and cotton curtains and blue hangings and purple ribbons and silver rings and marble pillars, gold and silver couches. You guys, I just think through that and that just sounds really uncomfortable. But, you know, to each his own. So mother of pearl, costly stones. I mean, gold goblets. I mean, this is what this party was, the like epitome of luxury. And it says it was all reflecting the king's generosity. He is trying to win his people over. Now, it also says that Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women at the royal palace of King Xerxes. So we have all the men having all the luxuries, and then Queen Vashti is doing the same kind of party for the women. During this time, the men and women would party separately because it was kind of appropriate, right, to do that. So why? Why was he having this massive party for 180 days and then pulling in all the people, probably to make sure to calm them down, and then having all the people party with him for 7 days? You see, he was showing off his power. He was making sure everybody came to the party that was in the vicinity because he wanted them to tell other people. This is prior to the age of social media, right? You can't just post a picture of your fame and glory and have everybody go, oh, they're rich, they're powerful, right? You had to go by word of mouth. That is how you got the word out, that you were rich and powerful. And he is wanting everybody to go tell everybody about how rich and powerful he is. And that is what is going on here. It is for the whole world to hear. Now, he allowed his people, it says here, to drink as much as they wanted to drink, as much as they pleased. Could you imagine going to a party with the best of the best, food, wine, whatever, and saying, for the next 7 days, nobody is going to stop you? It literally says that he made sure that each man did as they pleased, drank what they wanted. This was about the epitome of living for yourself in this moment. And let me tell you, he is wining and dining these people, and it is going to cost them. It's going to cost them. Why? Why is he having this party? Well, the purpose behind the party was because he was about to mount the greatest military invasion on Greece in world history. And we look at historically what we see is he gathered 2 million men and he invaded Greece. History tells us that he's actually going to be successful at this. He's actually going to do it and do it well. However, it was going to come at a cost. In fact, so many of those 2 million men died. His entire navy was almost wiped out. But he had to prove to these people that he could do this. And so he's trying to win them over. Why? Because his father tried to invade Greece before him, and it was an ultimate failure. And so here is King Xerxes wanting to invade Greece, knowing that it's going to cost him a lot. I don't know if he knew it was going to cost him this much, but he knew it was going to cost a lot. He knew it was going to be hard, and he is trying to win people over because it is going to take people's sons. It is going to take fathers away from the family. It is going to take a ton of money. It is going to have people sacrifice their own livelihood in order for him to be able to have all these resources at his disposal to go invade Greece. He is buying his leaders. He is buying the people. He is trying to gain support from the people because it's going to cost them. And so right off the bat, I have this lesson that I feel like I pulled out from this is be careful about who wines and dines you because it could cost you greatly. Sometimes we just love it when people just shower things on us and we're like, oh, look at them, they love me. And I'm telling you what, friends, look at the red flags and go, okay, what is really going on behind the scenes here? Because there's usually a lot of times that there is something going on that you should know about. But then we're also introduced to this great supporting character, and that is Queen Vashti. Here she is throwing her own party for the women. One thing when we look at the history of Queen Vashti, she was a princess before him. She is royal blood. So King Xerxes is probably married off to Queen Vashti, probably by his father himself, because of the ties that it would make of lands or something like that. And so she is of royal blood. She is Queen Vashti. She was probably Princess Vashti. I'm sure they probably went by princess before, but she is a daughter of a king herself. Now, the feast is about to end. It's the 7th day of this final second feast. And what happens? It says that King Xerxes is in high spirits. You guys know what that means, right? He is a little tipsy. This is being high spirits because of the wine. He is drunk, guys. He is very, very drunk. And he sends 7 eunuchs to go get Queen Vashti. Okay. I had to look this up because I was like, why? Do you ever see things in the scripture and you're like, why? Why is the number 7 so important for 7 eunuchs to go get Queen Vashti? Well, first of all, we need to understand this is very excessive. I mean, this whole thing is very excessive. All these parties are very excessive. But the fact that he sends 7 eunuchs to go get her is very excessive. He is wanting this woman to come. It looks like it's a force, right? If you have 7 eunuchs, it's not like a request. Will you please come? This is like a you will come. Okay, this is why this is important, that the high amount of eunuchs that actually had to go get Queen Vashti. Now, when it says that he wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze upon her beauty, this is why he goes and gets her to come to this party. When we look at this command and we look at the context of the originality of the scriptures and what it says, it highly implies immorality. There was something that he was asking her to do when he came, and he says he wants her to be wearing the royal crown on her head. Now, rabbis who have studied the original text believe that this was meant to say only the royal crown on her head. Oh, okay. So now you are going to Queen Vashti, who, by the way, is having her own party for the women. She's not like sitting in a room by herself. No, she is in front of the entire city. Every noblewoman, every woman in authority or whose husband is in authority, every townsperson, she is sitting and partying with them. She is entertaining them. She is wining and dining them. By the way, for the king, right? She is doing this. And then she gets the command from 7 eunuchs showing up that already looks excessive and basically saying, we want you to come and only your crown before the men. Okay, do you guys see this? Is just not good. Now, I don't know. Maybe these rabbis are wrong. Maybe it wasn't only your crown. Maybe it meant she was just supposed to come in her beautiful robes and garments with the crown on her head. Well, if they have it wrong, we still know that Persian law at the time actually told women that they were not allowed to go into a crowd of drunken men. It was still against the immorality of a woman of the time. And so when we look at this, it was wrong no matter what. Whether it was, obviously it was wrong if she was only in her crown, but even if it was her royal garments, and we just look at, oh, why couldn't you just show up anyway? Well, it went against protocol of the time. See, all these drunken men, they were going to treat her like a doll. It was like a mere object, like almost for the king's pleasure, a sex object. Why? Because, well, he was definitely in the bragging mood, correct? Like this whole party was about King Xerxes, bragging about all that he had. And when we see this, we think that, oh, he was just bragging about one more thing, because Vashti means beautiful. She was a beautiful woman, and he just wanted to show everybody all that he had, including his wife. You guys all know that bragging is never an attractive quality, right? Yeah, whenever we see somebody who's just bragging to one side or the other, we're always like, oh, it's just not pretty. And of course, it's not pretty on King Xerxes either. So this news comes to Queen Vashti, and she has a decision to make. She's in the middle of her own party. She is wining and dining the wives of all of these important men, of all of the townsfolk. Why? Because you guys do know that if a man was on the fence on whether he was going to support the king in this big war endeavor, I mean, if he was on the fence, who's going to throw him over that fence and help convince him? The wife, right? There's that saying in My Big Fat Greek Wedding where she says, the husband may be the head, but the wife is the neck and can turn the head whatever way she wants to. And whether you look at that and go, there's still some truth to it, right? Like, I know that if my husband's on the fence, I know that I could probably convince him. I probably couldn't always if he had his mind made up. But when he's like, I know the power that I have as a wife. And we don't want to downplay that. They knew that too. And so her job right now is helping the king. This is not something she's just doing because she wants to. This is her job. This is for her king. This is for her country, to convince these women to be in support for this. And I look at this and I'm like, here she is. She is in such a compromising situation because she has a decision to make, is does she obey the king, which, by the way, she's doing all of this for, even though it's going to compromise who she is. It's going to compromise her own integrity, her own character to be doing this. Or does she say, no, like, I am not going to go before the king, which, by the way, there are so many uncertainties on what that could mean. I mean, King Xerxes was kind of a radical man. He could just easily kill her right then and there. And here she finds herself in this situation. And I find it interesting because in verse 12, it tells us that when the king's order was conveyed to her, all it says is she refused to come. She refused to come. Like, that was it. Now, it does say that this made the king furious, and he burned with anger. I mean, it shows you the type of man this man is. But this is such a radical move for Queen Vashti, because especially during this time period, when you look at the relationship that husbands and wives had, but not only that, when we look at the roles and the authority that women had, which by the way, they had no authority. To say no to your husbands was a major deal, let alone this is the king of the biggest empire in history. But she knew, I'm not going to be treated like a sex object. I'm not going to be here, which by the way, if the whole world is to hear about all this splendor, not a word, all this grandeur and this splendor that is going on, I'm not going to be part of that. Like, I don't want to be, oh, and by the way, let me tell you, this was the most massive party ever. And Queen Vashti herself was the most beautiful thing ever for the whole world to see and hear about. She's like, nope, not going to be me. Now, she didn't know God. Queen Vashti wasn't like a believer in the God Most High. Like there would be Jewish people, like we're going to find from Esther, that do believe in that. She wasn't one of those, but she had enough wisdom and modesty to still know this is wrong. This is wrong. Now, the Bible tells us all the time to submit, which by the way, he doesn't tell just women to submit. He tells men to submit too. However, every command to submit is conditioned by a higher obligation to submit to God before man. As Christians, we have to submit to God before man. You know why? Because we can't use the excuse before God when we get to heaven and be like, oh, he told me so or she told me so. Like, that doesn't work, right? You are responsible for your own actions. If you can't say, well, they pushed me to do this because God's gonna be like, no, like you still did that, right? We are still responsible for our own actions, and we can't blame other people for that. And the same is the same here with Vashti. Like, she had a decision to make, and she couldn't say, well, this was forced upon me. There's still decisions that she has, or lack of decisions. So when we look at this, I think it's interesting that she just says she refused to come. It's as if she respectfully declined. I need that. I need a little bit more of that in my life. I respectfully decline. Like when somebody tries to get you in an argument, or somebody tries to get you to do something that you're like, oh, like that red flags come up against your character and integrity, and how I just would like to be like, yeah, you're right. I respectfully decline that. I don't need to fight you. I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to like raise my flag and like go up in war. Like I can just say, I refuse, right? I just love that about her because she held her tongue. She just said no. She held her tongue and said no. That was it. Like that was just matter of fact. I don't need to defend my case on why I'm not going to do this. I can just tell you no. And here's the crazy thing. A mere woman stood up and the whole empire shook. And we're going to see this next time in our devotion. It's like they did not know what to do. Like it rattled all these men to a core when this woman just stood up and just simply said no. It's like the mouse roared, but she didn't run and she didn't flee the palace. And let me tell you, sometimes I look at the scriptures and I see what people didn't do. And I'm kind of amazed by that. Why? Because I think that if I was in these situations and I knew like this could mean death, what would I be doing? Well, if I was going to be smart and I was Queen Vashti, I would get all of these women. I'd be like, oh, this is what he asked me to do. And I would get them all riled up and I would like have like a posse. Like if I had them, all of them at my disposal and I was doing this party, I'd be like, whoa, 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 look what King Xerxes is asking me to do. And I would get them going because I would feel like that would defend my case. So when the world heard about this, they would really know the truth because all these women would know. Can I tell you, Queen Vashti didn't do that, right? She doesn't say she did any of that. She just said no. No, she didn't get them all riled up. She didn't gather the women. She didn't share her frustrations even with these eunuchs to make sure that they told King Xerxes. She stood alone and she spoke for herself and she simply said no, knowing exactly what she was walking into. I mean, she is not ignorant. She knows her husband. She knows the king. She knows the authority of the king. She knew exactly what she was saying no to, right? Like she knew she was saying no to something that would hurt her own integrity, her own character, her own morality of who she was, and she wasn't willing to step foot into an immoral circumstance. And I look at this and I have such respect for this woman. I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about the boldness of Esther, but what about the boldness of Queen Vashti and how she simply said, no, I politely decline. And it wasn't that she was rebelling against her husband. She was rebelling against the evilness that was requested of her. And I think some of us need to go through that and we need to go like, who is my fight with? A lot of times our fight is not with people. Our fight is always against the evilness in this world. And that should always be our fight, because our fight should always be to bring as many people to heaven with us as we can. And so as Christian women, sometimes we need to remove the people from the evilness and go, you know what, my fight is not with this person. My fight is with the evilness that this person is asking of me to do. And I'm going to pray against that. And I'm going to pray that God gets a hold of their heart. And I'm going to pray that they understand, like, I still love them as a person. Like, I'm called to love people. As a child of God myself, I am called to love them. But I can be really frustrated and mad with the evilness that's in them, but I don't have to come at them. I can just politely decline and say, that is not for me, and that is not territory that I am stepping into. So perhaps in all of that, the Lord spoke to you today, and we can really admire the boldness of Queen Vashti to simply say, nope, that part is not for me. We'll be back again with our second part of chapter 1 of the book of Esther. I love you guys. Let us know in the comments on things we can be praying for each other for as we walk through these devotions together.